Hey everybody, welcome back to another Bald Move Prestige. We got one of the most prestigious films we've ever considered from one of the Hollywood's most prestigious directors, Alfred Hitchcock's 1954 Rear Window. This was, of course, directed by Alfred Hitchcock himself. It was written by John Michael Hayes, which I found out is one of his frequent movie collaborators. They worked together on Catch a Thief, The Trouble with Harry, and The Man Who Knew Too Much, as well as Rear Window, and is based on It Had to Be Murder, a short story by Cornell Woolrich. It stars the great Jimmy Stewart as Jeff, a World War II veteran and some kind of adrenaline junkie cameraman. Think of who's the guy, the Gonzo reporter?
Yeah, Vegas, Fear and Loathing.
Hunter Thompson. Hunter S. Thompson. Think of a Hunter S. Thompson, less typewriter, more camera.
Yeah.
In 1954. And it also stars Grace Kelly as Lisa, his gorgeous, wealthy socialite girlfriend who's fallen for him, and he's trying to keep at arm's length for interesting reasons. And Raymond Burr, Perry Mason himself, as the hulking Lars Thorwald, his across the courtyard neighbor who Jeff increasingly suspects of murdering his wife. This suspicion will grow throughout the movie, along with our own. Boy, what will be the resolution? We'll have to find out. Alfred Hitchcock also shows up to wind the clock at one point. He likes to do his little Where's Alfred cameos. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the consensus top 3 Hitchcock movies, it seems. Like, you know, it's the Hitchcock intelligentsia has various different favorites, but like this is always mentioned. And it seems to be like, I don't know, it seems like maybe the consensus favorite for widest appeal or biggest hit. So what did you, I guess after we've said this piece, what's your relationship with Hitchcock movies and what did you think of this one?
I don't really have a relationship with Hitchcock movies. I remember when I was a kid seeing The Birds, and at this point it's been so long since I've seen it that all I can remember is birds attack people. And they're very scared of them. They get stuck in a house, I think, at some point because there are so many birds outside.
Are you sure you're not thinking of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 Birdemic?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not 100%. So that's my relationship with Hitchcock, is to say basically non-existent. So this is effectively the first Hitchcock movie I really sat down and watched. And I was pleasantly surprised because this is a movie from 1954. It is in color, so it's not like my ultimate kryptonite, which is like old black and white movies. But I was impressed with the way it was able to grip me, considering it is a single location and your POV kind of never really moves away from Jimmy Stewart's character, Jeff.
I don't think it ever does. I don't think the POV literally ever leaves the apartment.
Yeah. So it was surprising to me that it was so engaging, because it is from top to bottom. Like I felt like Jimmy Stewart in these scenes being absorbed into the story naturally by the mystery of it. You know, I'm peering through the binoculars with him. I'm looking into these other people's windows, and I'm getting engrossed in their lives just as much as he is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really interesting things that Hitchcock does. Cinematically with that concept of, you know, the fact that we're watching someone who's watching someone, and that's kind of like, you know, peeping Tom. Like, he establishes very in the beginning of the movie that this is not something that a respectable person does, and it's not great, but yet we're doing it and he's doing it, and we're interested and he's interested, and it's a nice little slow. I would say it's a slow burn, except for I was gripped from almost the first frame. And So my relationship with Hitchcock is a while ago, like 20 plus years ago, when the AFI first released their top 100 films of all time. I started getting pretensions of culture, and I'm like, you know what? I live right next door to a movie rental joint.
They have all these things. Through their window and see what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean these movies are always on the shelf. I'm gonna start, I'm just gonna start knocking them off. And I had a bad run of Hitchcock where I watched like The Birds and Psycho. And I don't know. Again, I was a feckless, 20-something. I might go back as a 43-year-old and think differently of it, but they were slow, bad special effects, camera work, you know, kind of stodgy, black and white. I just you know, this guy's supposed to be the master of suspense, and these are these old creaky films. And so then when I got to Rear Window, because that was fairly high on the list, I remember thinking, man, because I think seen like the summer before or right around this time saw a Shia LaBeouf Suburbia, which is supposed to be a take on this film. And I'm like, man, I don't give a shit about Jimmy Stewart sitting in his back of his suburban home, watching one fucking yard, all this kind of stuff. And so I skipped this film. And then when I watched it, I immediately realized like how wrong I was. Like, this isn't, because Suburbia is kind of like a single backyard. And, you know, there's not a lot of interest outside of that. This movie, like, you're watching this Manhattan like high-rise courtyard. There's like, what, a dozen apartments that you're looking into?
Yeah.
And what's really absorbing is Hitchcock's ability to paint each one of these apartments has a little story. You know, there's the struggling musician, there's the lonely woman who's trying to psych herself up to put herself back out there after suffering some kind of emotional devastation. There's the absurdly beautiful girl who dances. There's the couple that squabbles. There's the couple that sleeps out on their fire escape and lowers their dog down to the courtyard to do its dirty business every day. And it is kind of fascinating to just at a remove watch all this apparently natural behavior happening.
Yeah.
And like I said, and there was a while where I'm not sure, like I knew something was going to happen, but I wasn't sure like which house it was going to be in. So it's like you're kind of paying attention to all of them. And like I said, I don't want to get too far into the movie and spoil everything, but I just found it really fascinating. I found the character of Jeff, like his apparent indifference to this, again, absurdly beautiful woman in his life. This wild insurance nurse that comes to berate and massage him every day.
I love her so much.
I'm just pissed that I'm paying $1,200 for insurance. I've never had a lady come over and massage me.
No.
Like, your insurance money went a hell of a lot further in 1954 than it does in 2020. Let me tell you.
Gotta break
let
your
me
leg.
tell you. Yeah, I need to break my leg up to the hip, and then maybe they'll send me one of those sassy, sharp-toothed, serpent-tongued massage therapists to rub my shoulders and make sure I'm not peeping on people. The other thing is, I just thought that the movie's very funny. It's got like kind of modern flirtatious pitter patter between Grace Kelly and Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, this movie is horny as fuck. Like I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And I just thought that stuff was just really charming. And then again, like the way it is a slow build is with the suspense, because at first, you know, it's a curiosity, and then it's kind of fascination, and then it becomes an obsession. And it was surprisingly late in the movie where I still didn't know exactly what was going on, whether Jimmy Stewart was just taking things too far, whether this person had actually killed somebody. You know, this is an old movie. I'm expecting a subversion, but hell, what the hell were they even subverting back then? You know, this is all kind of fresh. So it kept me guessing to the end, and it's my new favorite Hitchcock film.
and part of that, like, you know, feeling of I'm not quite sure is how they frame his situation. You know, it's like he's stuck in this apartment because he's got this broken leg. And so you kind of feel like, okay, maybe he's getting a little antsy. Maybe he's like looking for too much where, you know, there's some innocent explanation here. And it carries that throughout the film, I thought.
Yeah, before we get too far into the spoiler take, maybe I can, you know, just tell people what the premise of this film is. I mean, I feel like we've pretty much already given it away. But yeah, Jimmy Stewart plays this guy named Jeff, who is kind of, I guess I'd call him a combat photographer, except for he's not just that. Like he does dangerous things, bullfights, wars, insurrections, car racing, like putting himself right in the middle of the straightaway, and that's how he gets into the position he's in. He got ran over by a race car, and he's got a shattered leg, and he's laid up for 8 weeks in his apartment. And in the 7th week, New York City is hit with a heat wave that causes everybody to open up their windows and they're desperate to get airflow, which explains the rest of what was kind of be a far-fetched plot. And you know, Jimmy, or I guess Jeff, is bored. He's this adrenaline junkie, and he doesn't have any outlet for it, so he just starts. He's got his long range telephotic, wide angle, telephoto lens, and he starts snooping on people. There's the really attractive dancer across the way. There's the couple that fights. There's the cute dog. There's all kinds of things to observe. And then one day he sees something a little sinister, and then increasingly hard to explain activities from one of his neighbors that makes him think that there's been a murder committed. Yeah. And, can he convince his friends? Can he convince the police? Is he losing his mind? Is he making something out of nothing? That's the rest of the movie. That's literally 90 minutes of this movie's runtime is him getting obsessed with this perhaps nothing of a case. Mm-hmm. And it is fascinating from the first frame till nearly the last.
It was also a very successful movie. It had a budget of about $1 million, and it ended up making 26 times that in the box office, which by any definition of success is successful. And it was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Didn't actually win any, though.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Color, Best Sound Recording. Grace Kelly was not nominated for this, but she actually did win an Oscar that year, except it was for The Country Girl, a different movie. Huh. So
I've not seen that one.
Yeah.
What was do you know what the monster film year was that knocked out Rear Window? Or
there were, I don't know, because it lost to a different movie in every category, so it wasn't. It may not have had a monster a movie.
1954 was a stacked year, man. Just like
Apparently.
Brutal competition.
And I did a little research on Grace Kelly because, like you mentioned, obviously she's beautiful, but she's also super charismatic, I thought, in this film. And, with her winning the Academy Award that same year for a different movie, I was like, man, how much did she work that she's got 2 huge high-profile movies out, one that also won Best Adapted Screenplay that year. So apparently she only worked for like 6 years. It's
Well, then she became a no-shit princess of Monaco.
Yeah.
And like kind of retired from public life, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, and just went and ruled that country for a while.
I bet she fucking did.
It's crazy to me, though, that she's mentioned, in such high regard, having only worked for 6 years. And it was kind of in her early 20s, so.
Yeah, with this sample size, though, because she's got, that. It's funny because you hear about some of these starlets, like Marilyn Monroe, and then you watch a few of their movies like, okay, I get why they were huge stars. And there's, it's like this weekend I saw an absurdly photogenic picture of Elvis Presley in like 1969, I think. And he was just like getting ready for like one of his random Vegas shows. And he looks like he's ready to go out there and eat the fucking audience. He's just like, this tiger made of sex and charisma. And like I'm shocked at how many people like were surprised that like Elvis Presley in his prime was an attractive individual. And it's like,
why would you be surprised?
If you only know the like bloated late stage Vegas Elvis, then yeah, maybe. Yeah. But like, yeah, there's a reason why these people have this reputation. I think Grace Kelly, she's like supermodel attractive. Mm-hmm. Elegant and classy, but she also has this kind of charisma and gusto that she needed to sell this character.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, it's an interesting thing to go through this relationship with Jeff, because at first I'm like, I don't get this guy. He's like, okay, he's this adrenaline junkie and he's sidelined, so I understand why he's so cranky, but he's just got this dour outlook, and especially when it comes to his girlfriend Lisa, like spends a majority of the movie trying to run her off with like, no, you won't, you get you out in the jungles and your high heels will sink in the mud, sweetheart. And he's just like constantly like saying like, oh, you're this wealthy socialite. We're from different sides of the tracks. And the thing is like, eventually I kind of realized that like, well, I guess they're having a surprisingly mature conversation about this, because I guess if Jeff wanted to be a cad, he'd accept all this attention and, drag her out into the jungles and then she'd be miserable. But like they do have these like what felt like very modern, sophisticated conversations about what they wanted in life and whether that stuff matched. And, you know,
Yeah, it's
like
incredible how under the radar that stuff is in this film, because you get so absorbed into watching the neighbors and the mystery of what's going on here that you can pretty easily lose track of their relationship and how it's developing. But it absolutely has like a satisfying arc with a very strong and emphatic conclusion. And I was just impressed by the emotional angle of the relationship as I was with the mystery of this film.
well, and I felt like that there was like this expert pacing to the peeping stuff.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you'd get like 10 or 15 minutes of just watching Jimmy watch people, and then his nurse would come and something would happen. You'd reveal something about his character, and then you'd go
Every
back
time
into
that
peeping.
happened, I felt like, don't turn away from the window. I want to know what's happening over here. Like every time he turns away from the window, I'm thinking you're missing something. Something's going to happen.
Right.
It's going to break the case wide open, and I want to see
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Goddamn it.
Yeah. But that was I think that's part of the tension of building the fact
Yeah.
that sometimes you do tear your, and also as an audience, we feel like, you know, and Grace Kelly's in his lap. It's like essentially, you know, kneading his chest and kissing him and being like, pay attention to me. We're like, damn, man. Pay attention to this lady. But on the other hand, we're also impatient to get back to the peeping.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, when this is the first movie I saw where people say, oh, Hitchcock's the master of suspense. And I'm like, oh, I understand that because, yeah, the pacing is just so well done. And I want to talk about the set.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the most incredible things I've seen. Hitchcock had this entire courtyard and like exterior street built that's supposed to resemble something out of like, I think it's Greenwich Village,
Yeah.
in Manhattan, and it looks exactly like this. And it was designed this big elaborate like 5-6 story stage. It was designed with like custom plumbing to accommodate this like torrential downpour that happens on set. It had very sophisticated lighting at the time Hitchcock could reproduce atmospheric conditions and lighting. Like there's incredible sunsets. You know, we always harp on this on The Walking Dead, but like, you know, without a shadow of the doubt, whether it's dawn, whether it's high noon, whether it's evening, the sun setting, whether it's the dark of night, and the sky is just like fucking on fire. And it gives you all these abilities that like, it's just a massive soundstage. So there's shots where they're wide and you can see the entire courtyard and everything. Like, you know, I watched on a 4K copy, and you can, in every one of those little windows, you can see people living their lives, and it is extremely fascinating. And Hitchcock is so good with just having just little vignettes establishing these characters' personalities, how they interact with one another, selling the heat wave, like, you know, how like kind of lazy and languid people are and like tempers flare. I just thought that the set, and it's also very kind of heightened realism, almost West Side Story with the, you know, realistic but still clearly fake lighting. It's like a sunset only amped up to the maximum a sunset could be kind of effect. And I found it just really effective and arresting.
And some of that, you know, otherworldly, not quite real feeling that you get from the look of this movie, I think comes down to Technicolor, because this whole thing was shot in Technicolor. And
what is that? So what does that mean? I thought that meant just film, like color.
well, it is film, but it's all black and white film. So the way that I understand Technicolor to work is that you've got a camera which splits the light coming in into 3 different spectrums, one red, one green, one blue. Actually, it's not as simple as that, but what you get out of a Technicolor camera is a film stock that is a black and white film stock that represents the red spectrum of what you saw, the green on another, and the blue on another. And what they do is they dye those pieces of film their respective colors, and then they recombine them on top of each other, and that produces the color effect that you see. So it really comes down to like a physical process of dyeing the film that is the thing that actually gives it its color. It was shocking to me that, because I saw like it was shot in black and white, and I'm like, how is that possible? Because I'm seeing it in color. I thought Technicolor was a post process they did with like I don't know, going in and like painting frame by frame or something, but it's really not. It's like you film it, it splits out into 3 pieces, you dye individually in bulk, and then stick them back together.
But that also explains why the colors seem like super saturated and heightened. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Grace Kelly wears this green dress that's like the greenest fucking thing you've ever seen.
Yeah, because
And
you're really
it also
only getting
it's
one color tone for each color, right?
so they can like, you know, like if it's a muted green and they dye it like a pure green, then it's going to be a very vivid green.
Right.
Interesting, because as like I also just recently watched the Wizard of Oz, and I was kind of blown away. Every time I see it, I'm blown away by when it goes black and white, the color, and just like, Jesus Christ, this is the most colorful thing you can ever see.
Right.
But it's amazing how colorful this film is without any of the whimsy, without any of the glass blown like flowers and the crazy lollipop trees and shit like that. Like, it's just the other thing you notice is how piercing blue 90% of the people's eyes are in this film.
It's like everybody except the nurse, I think. Like,
I think the nurse is the only
eyes.
person with brown eyes, but like the police detective, Grace Kelly, Jimmy Stewart, they both have just like wild ice blue eyes that, you know, attract your attention from across the room. It's incredible.
And I think the reason it looks so strange to us is because a lot of the times with Technicolor, if you have muddier tones or like browns or something, like combinations of colors, they tend to get wonky when you do the dyeing process. And so they either avoid using those colors or they just dye them, you know, a more vivid and solid color. So you don't see a lot of browns in these types of films, or yellows. The Yellow Brick Road being one of the exceptions, but apparently that caused a lot of problems with that process.
I think that the setting also is like, you can't set it apart from the set, because as we've already mentioned, the entire POV of this film takes place from Jimmy Stewart's apartment. You never go outside, you never go to a different room. It's just, you're there in this apartment. And because of that, we've already talked about how effective it is just to slip into that role of being a voyeur with Jimmy Stewart. But it also just sets up some damn effective shots. Like, some things I'll take with me to my grave is the shot of like Raymond Burr smoking a cigar by himself in a pitch black apartment, and all you can see is that just red ring kind of glow and throb. It's like this low-key Eye of Sauron.
I thought you were going to say looking when he looks up right into the lens of the camera.
Dude,
I was like, oh my God.
That's a real moment. For this whole time you've been watching this guy unaware, and for the first time, I should have seen it coming, because I was like, it's going to be a moment. But the first time Raymond Burr with his crazy ass face like figures things out and looks right at you through that telephotic lens, and you know it's on. This is where all this suspense has led to. And the scriptwriter and Hitchcock expertly have engineered a situation to where now, you know, Jimmy Stewart's in his maximum place of vulnerability. He's all alone. This guy knows where he's at. Apparently, all of his theories have come true. But, you know, even then, I was thinking, like, it's entirely possible that this guy, because as Jimmy was like going around his apartment in the climax and like looking desperately for something he can defend himself with, I'm like, man, I could totally see him getting a poker, bashing this guy's brains out, and it turns out that he's innocent. He's just coming over to be like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you harassing me? Why are you being such a crazy asshole? I'm getting a divorce, you know? It's 1954. Right. We're not just like throwing divorce parties now. Like, till the very end, I thought it was entirely possible that this was all misunderstanding and Jimmy would be the villain of the story. But it also didn't feel cheap that he wasn't.
No.
Did you think my few criticisms, or where this film starts to creak, is in that climax, because there was some sped up film work that Hitchcock was trying to do to like increase the drama, and there was some, like, I feel like the action would be cut much more frantic in nowadays. The fact that like 4 flashbulbs were used, I would have preferred like maybe 1 or 2, and the effect of him being blinded lasted much longer. But that's the only part that felt a little creaky.
Like, I definitely noticed the sped up film, but I'm not going to judge it too harshly. Like, you do what you got to do. He clearly like wanted a particular pacing for everything. And that reflects throughout the film, like even in the length of the shots, because I kept noticing when I was watching this movie, they're not cutting away from these scenes. Like, I would be shocked if this movie has more than 7 scenes in it, because you're hanging out with Jeff, with Jimmy Stewart, through the entire movie, and you don't really need to cut away that often. You cut away when like time needs to pass, right? Because you don't cut away to go see what other characters are doing. That's just not how this film works. So like, I was impressed by how much mileage they got out of each scene and how little they had to cut away to actually change the setting.
Yeah, and I read an essay on Reddit where someone's explaining and defending Hitchcock's use of the long cuts at the end, and they said that like the reason you go into like quick cuts is when you want to destroy and disorientate the user or the watcher, the film. The person watching the film,
Yeah.
You want to break down the spatial relationships and make things like, people are on top of each other. And this film is all about the distance and the remove of the voyeur from the action and us as the audience from the film. And by staying in those cuts and like, building, because I thought like up until Raymond Burr came into the door was like, I was fucking, sweating bullets and shitting bricks. Eating my fingernails down to the nub, like, oh my God, when he busts through this door, what the hell is going to happen? And the long, like, not just long shots of him like staggering forward, but also like this is emphasizing the distance being collapsed. One foot, like one pace at a time, and that to an audience back in the day, that would have felt like almost unbearable. That like every time he takes a step forward, there's the flash, there's the blood red dissolve, he gets reorientated, he takes another step, and then once like Raymond Burr lays hands on Jimmy Stewart and starts to throw him out the window, then he starts with the jumbled, like, crazy sped up footage cut, because now he's right on top of you. There is no remove.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, 60 years later, I'm not sure how that works, but that's a fucking dope idea, Hitchcock.
Yeah, that's why, that's the hallmark of a good director. He's thinking about that stuff, right? Even if it doesn't hold up 60 years later, he's at least thinking about that stuff.
And my brain was saying stuff like, well, I don't know about the sped up thing, or I don't know how convincing this is, but like was aware of the fact that I was still very concerned, like are Jeff's friends going to be able to race back to the apartment in time to save him? Because Hitchcock could kill this guy. Hitchcock could absolutely kill Jimmy Stewart. And the other thing is like, James Stewart and Grace Kelly are, I've seen them in a lot of things. Well, I guess not Grace Kelly so much, but James Stewart at this point, I've seen in several films. I really like him.
Yeah.
But like, thinking of him being like the Tom Hanks of his day, where like you don't need a reason to get invested. Like Tom Hanks is on the film from frame one, you want to like him.
Yeah.
That like how horrifying it must have been for these audiences to see this character. Like they don't have any remove from like age or whatever. Like this is the biggest star of the day, falling in love with the biggest star of his day. And he's like this kind of like man's man, but he's been sidelined for a cool fucking reason. And like people are just locked into this film from frame one. The fact that still works 60 years later is, I think, a testament to that guy's charisma and Hitchcock's ability to capture that and ramp up that tension.
Yeah, this is only the third Jimmy Stewart movie we've covered. We've done Man Who Shot Liberty Valance and It's a Wonderful Life as well. I would say this is probably the best Jimmy Stewart movie I've seen so far. I like those other two, but this one is really, really good.
No, this one feels modern in a way that, I mean, obviously Liberty Valance is a period piece. It's a Wonderful Life. What can you say about A Wonderful Life?
Right, it's a classic.
Like 2-hour podcast on it.
It's a fun movie to watch. I'm not sure I consider it as innovative or amazing as this film.
That's what I'm saying. This one feels like a fully modern, like in the sensibilities and the dialogue. Like, there's just some, there's just some really witty dialogue where, Jimmy Stewart's talking like admiringly about the lady across the street being all, well, she's just all eat, drink, and be merry. And his, insurance nurse is like, in a couple of years, she's going to be fat, alcoholic, and miserable.
I love
And
this woman.
Jimmy Stewart with the detective friend, and he's like, "Come on, why are you interested in solving this case? They're making me look foolish." And he's like, "Well, I like to do both if possible."
Uh,
and and just like how the dialogue and setting serves the plot, like especially in the third act, there's a scene where Grace Kelly is going to spend the night, kind of scandalous, and his detective friend comes in, and like Jimmy Stewart's very defensive about it because this is kind of scandalous behavior, and he's saying like "careful, Bill" or whatever, and then the detective uses that to be like, well, what the fuck? Do you think this guy across the window is going to come in and tell you he's going to get a divorce? Do you think that people don't have their own secrets that they want to keep? You
yeah,
telling your landlord that your girlfriend's spending the night?
right.
You
Should I
know?
break into your house and arrest you because it looks suspicious? Like,
Yeah. And I found like that stuff was incredibly effective because, we get Jimmy's perspective and why it's like nothing is the matter. But like scenes like that served not only to, because it's like I felt like there's this constant tension of like, well, of course this guy's done something. This is scandalous. And then the detective would like kind of poke around and be like, no, there's reasonable answers for all of this. And I just kept going back and forth with like, Jimmy's overreacting. This is a movie about obsession. Um, and like, but no, the movie is about exactly what it purports to be about. I feel like nowadays the movie would have to subvert it because
right.
everyone would be expecting it, but no one had ever made a movie like this before.
Mhm.
So what the hell are you subverting? The audiences had no expectation. They were just scared that Jimmy Stewart might get throttled to death by this scary looking Raymond Burr dude.
Yeah, sure.
Um, but
One more thing about the set and setting here that I've got
uh-huh.
is you talked about how they constructed this set to be this Greenwich Village type courtyard, and I thought that was super effective. Not just from the perspectives that we talked about with all the visual stuff you can do, but also the sound, the diegetic sort of feeling you get of being across a courtyard from somebody and kind of making out just a little bit of what they're saying when they're having loud conversations, or hearing some piano music in the background, or any of that stuff that they're doing. It puts you into the situation of Jimmy Stewart, watching from the window, so much more than if you had the sound guy going back in later and recreating a couple of fake sound effects and trying to put in like words don't quite match up with the lips from across the way, that stuff. I thought it was phenomenal. And it's kind of a shame that it lost in the Academy Awards for Best Sound Recording, because it's good. It's real good.
Yeah, the sound design, how it captures all that, like during different POVs, like the piano music sounds a little bit more echoey, like it's bouncing off the nearby buildings, and like you can hear the faint echoes of the street noise from the alley that kind of connects everything together. And I love that, like just tiny little lock key glimpse of the broader outside world that you can see, like where the purported murderer is carrying a briefcase to. Where does it go? Well, who the hell knows? I only see 6 feet of the rest of the world. But yeah, that sound design of just like the clinking and clanging and like people listening to radio broadcasts and having arguments and fights, and there's also, I think it's brilliant. So many different ways they have to examine this, like, our thoughts about being a voyeur. And this is stuff that, like, I guess Hitchcock has explored before. Like, there's a point in Psycho where Norman Bates tries to sink this car in the swamp behind the Bates Hotel, and the car gets so far and then it stops with its roof still exposed. And Hitchcock says that every audience he watched would get gasped. Like, why are they gasping? Do they want this man to get away from the murder? And he found that fascinating, that he had made this repulsive character, but people are kind of like on some level wanting him to get away with it because of the way the film was gazing at him and holding him at a regard. And he's intentionally fucking with this entire movie with like, what is, when is it a good idea that you can be a little scandalous? When can you be a busybody? When can you be eavesdropping? And one of the best or most effective ones I thought was this lonely woman downstairs, where we see have these like fake dates where she's trying to psych herself out. She has a date with a younger man who turns out to be a bit of a cad and tries to take advantage of her. And then she's got this bottle of pills, and clearly she's going to commit suicide. But Jimmy's more interested in this potentially fake mystery that he's solving, and almost like forgets that he can actually do something. You know, like, hey, I could at any point in his time, you know, I could send a note over there and be like, hey, I noticed you're lonely. I'm stuck in the apartment. Do you want to come over, have dinner? My girlfriend caters these wonderful meals. There's things he could have done. The cute dog in the basket, which I was delighted with and scandalized when he died. The neighbors shout like, how can you all be this cruel? And neighbors are supposed to look out for and talk. But you got this idea that even in 1954, the neighbors weren't like that. But this idea that all he could do is passively watch, and the idea that he can actually pick up a phone, and then he gets distracted with that and almost gets his girlfriend killed. It's like I said, it's interesting examination of the morality and ethics of it without really getting very, very talky and preachy about it. It's just something you're kind of left to wrestle with.
And I feel like, you know, the thing that he was onto in this 1954 film that says, hey, maybe our communities are kind of falling apart and we're more interested in like the scandal that we might see from our neighbors than actually getting together with them and communicating with them. And there's so many little things he's doing in the film, like between putting up fences between the yards, having neighbors shout at each other over them to shut up. You know, not even coming out of your house to walk your dog, right? Because that would be the opportunity you would have to interact with your neighbors. They lower it down in a fucking basket and let it do its own thing. It's like there's no contact there. And as much as he was onto something there, it's 50-fold now, right? Like with the internet, the internet is our telephoto lens sort of peering out toward the rest of the world. But for a large part of us, I think we're very, very much isolated from especially our local communities, but really a lot of community at large.
Yeah, these trends just, you know, can like this breakdown in the community probably happen in the big cities because, you know, when you're in your own block in your neighborhood, it's real easy to keep, you know, that monkey brain 150 person limit of who we can actually physically care about. It's easy to keep your neighborhood in that circle, but you know, you blow past that number in one apartment building,
right?
You know,
yeah,
and you can see that because, like, you know, like when that one lady was ranting and raving about her dog dying, I couldn't help but think, like, if I was a neighbor, I might yell something like, "I didn't kill your dog, but kind of don't appreciate you lowering the shit on a basket, just having it piss and shit everywhere. I stepped in its shit last week. How about you lower down a fucking garden spade and maybe your husband to pick it up?" Like, yeah, it's obnoxious. It's kind of obnoxious, isolated, not giving a shit about anybody's behavior.
I don't know that I want to be shouting at the crazy couple upstairs who sleeps on their fire escape.
I looked in because I looked into
murdered
that
in the night.
Apparently, that's what everyone in New York did during those heat waves. It's the only these like they slept on. There's tons of photos of entire families sprawled out on their fire escape, passed out because it was so fucking hot in those brownstones. You know, the sun would just bake them all day, and those bricks would release their heat, and it'd be even hotter than it is outside. So
I was thinking this scenario probably wouldn't be very likely to happen in modern day because we all have air conditioning, or you know, a large part of us do. So, you know, nobody's going to be opening their windows to have Jimmy Stewart peering in.
Yeah, I did. And there's a lot, you know, because I always like to peek around and see what people are saying. And like, I feel like that's one of the big things that people in modern audiences have a hard time. Like, oh, it's so unlikely that everyone would have their windows wide open, their blinds open. I'm like, do
you have
man,
no empathy?
The movie tried. Yeah, the movie tried really hard to tell you why these people are doing this and how it is kind of like they were kind of like, even there's several moments where the people inside are intentionally self-conscious about their behavior with the open window and go to shut it. But like, it's fucking 95 degrees in the beginning of this movie and probably 90% humidity. Yeah, there's no air conditioning. Of fucking course they're going to have their windows open. Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought, I loved every single one of the characters. I thought it was charming that not only did Jeff get a happy ending, but like almost everyone, you kind of go around the courtyard and everybody's got like a satisfying resolution to their little conundrums. Yeah. Which I thought I didn't expect from Hitchcock. I thought Hitchcock's the guy that like rips your heart out of your chest, but he took it real easy on us this film. And honestly, Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly's arc, like the fact that she got sucked into this, she became even more adventurous than him. Like her crawling across that ledge on high heels and sneaking in windows,
Yeah.
and when he gets caught up with the drama going on, the lonely woman, and loses track of Raymond Burr, and we see him coming not just down the aisle, not just in the staircase, but the actual fucking hallway leading up to his front door. It's a real moment. And then when the lights turn out, you can't tell what's going on. But yeah, no, I think it's a cute story that, like, you know, just because she's a wealthy socialite, maybe she does want to get her hands dirty. Maybe she does want to get involved in something a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, so that's the relationship part of this movie that I found just as strong as the mystery. I think they do a great job showing this man coming to realize that his girlfriend is much more than he gave her credit for.
Yeah.
If you look at their relationship at the beginning, he wants to call it off because he doesn't think she's the type of person. And, you know, everything she's been demonstrating to him has told him that she's not the type of person who can really mesh with his lifestyle, and vice versa, right? He's not the guy who's going to sit around. Look at the predicament he's in, and look at how crazy it's making him. He wants to be out there photographing crazy things in crazy places. He doesn't think she can go with him. And by the end of the movie, they've turned that around. He has realized through, you know, both emotionally and literally, this voyeurism of his has showed him what kind of person she is, and he's come to a deeper appreciation. And so I really love the end of the movie where we kind of come right back to the beginning before he got invested in this murder mystery, but things have changed night and day. At the beginning, he was kind of looking away from the window. It was so hot. He was bored out of his mind. By the end of the movie, he's doing the same thing. He's looking away from the window, you know, no longer concerned about this murder mystery. But his mind has changed completely about the person he's with. And he's, I don't know if he's learned a lesson from the mystery, but he's certainly learned something about their relationship.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of bothered, because like at the end there's this great shot of her reading this adventure magazine about being in the Himalayas, and she finishes that, and then she picks up Vogue or something. It's just kind of like it's almost like her hero's journey, because that's part of the classic, Campbellian hero's journey, is that the hero comes back after an adventure, master of, both worlds, the world that they were proficient at begin, and then they've mastered the strange alien world. It'd be interesting if Jimmy had also become maybe more appreciative of her side of the world too. I don't know how you would tell that story of why you would appreciate culture and style and things like that, but
I think he is like the slower lifestyle. I think he's come to some kind of appreciation, though he hasn't traveled as far as I think he thinks she has.
Right.
But there's a smile on his face while he's relaxing, right? It's not like he's this pent up, this pent up ball of frustration because he's stuck in a single leg cast. No, now he's stuck in 2 leg casts, and he's okay with it. Is my reading of that? Mm-hmm. I still think he wants to get out there and do his thing with photography, but also he's not quite as anxious as he was at the beginning of the movie.
Do you have, because I've got some random observations that I wanted to make about the movie. Do you want to go into shift into that mode?
I got one more question for you about the
the
structure and the mystery of this movie.
Hit me.
I didn't see a lot of them. Maybe only one. I don't know. Are there a lot of red herrings in this movie? Because you mentioned how straightforward the mystery ends up being, right? They could have gone with a big twist, but it turns out to be exactly what they thought it was from the beginning, and all the pieces of evidence kind of just line up.
Yeah, I thought so. When there's a couple things, I think it's intentionally nebulous about how Raymond Burr's character Lars created all of his alibis. Like, there's this lady in black that exits his apartment that, and that she's in mourning. Maybe. And I always thought this is this is like a mid-50s divorce, which is kind of taboo, and you're not supposed to do it, and they're all shameful, and she's going back to live with her folks out in the country, and he's going to soldier on as and that's what was kind of my cover for a lot of this. But I thought that there might be like he might be missing the lonely lady committing suicide, the Mrs. Torso might be like raped or assaulted by one of the wolves that are at her door, or the young recently married couple. There was some signs that maybe there was some stuff going awry there. So I
Yeah.
kept on thinking that it's not going to be misdirection, like false clues around Raymond Burr, but like that's the thing we're fixated on, and we're missing some other larger picture that's nefarious.
I kept
But
looking
no,
for him. Like the piano
yeah,
player, that songwriter guy. He was maybe one of them. He comes home drunk and angry one night, and I was thinking,
yep,
and it's the same night that the wife is killed, uh,
yeah.
over in the apartment. So I was thinking, oh, maybe he snuck over and did it for some reason, and everything else is a red herring. But honestly, like that and the woman on the train, like you mentioned, might be the only misdirection I could really see.
And I don't even know if they're misdirection. It's more of just like his clumsy. I mean, this guy's just not great at committing murder. Although without Jim Stewart watching him, maybe he gets away with it. But like,
Yeah,
it seemed like there was a lot of clumsy and inartful and ad hoc ways of covering this up. But I don't know, because like they I think that the movie's POV is that, but like I'm thinking this guy killed this guy, got rid of her body without this guy that's spending his life looking over there without him even seeing it. And he has the foresight to have someone get on a train and send the freight down and have her pick it up at the station. Like that's a pretty, like that would have withstood like casual neighbor scrutiny.
yeah.
But no, I guess I didn't think there's a lot of dang. It's more of kind of like, well, look at what he's doing. It's fucking crazy. And then the police officer would go over there. Well, I talked to him, and it turns out that she's fine, and she left, and she's visiting her folks. And like it was more of that, and just like you said, there's a lot of conflict that didn't have anything to do with the central stuff in the movie. It's more of just
Sure.
like people cooped up in blazing hot temperatures kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I thought that's like constantly I was thinking like, oh. Jimmy Stewart is just way off in left field, and he's missing the actual thing, or he's going to frame an innocent man or murder an innocent man, because I know that's another thing that Hitchcock is kind of obsessed with, the idea of a man, an innocent man being punished for something he didn't do. But no, that's
Before we get to random observations, I want to go back real quick to their relationship, because I really like how the film lays that out. As much as it is a suspense over this murder mystery, it's also a suspense over their relationship and how that will either, flourish or flounder, depending on what you think is going to happen. And Hitchcock does some really good things with just certain shots that tell you both what's going through his head, what he thinks about her in any given moment, and and I don't know, just gives you an insight into how he's feeling. Like that newlywed couple is probably the prime example, because if you look at them throughout the film, he plays a lot with what you can and can't see in any of these apartment
right.
windows. And if you look at them, you see the beginning of this thing, right, where they're all excited to finally be together and be getting into their home, and this one guy just won't leave so that they can get down to business. Their dirty deeds, and they shut the blinds and they're gone. Like you can't see into that apartment for most of the film, and he's looking around everywhere else, and every once in a while he comes back to that apartment. The blinds are still drawn. Maybe the guy hangs out smoking a cigarette and then goes right back in and draws the shade again. And to me, that was Hitchcock saying, this is a guy who is not sure what his future looks like if that were him and Lisa, right? He can't even picture it in his head.
And like I said, I mentioned that most of the apartment vignettes get something of a happy ending, but that's one of the few exceptions, because like you overhear an argument where she's like, well, if you're going to quit your job, I would have never married you, which is the fear that he had about oh, this woman's going to destroy you and pin you down. And then they do that, and they pin over to Miss Torso, and it turns out she's been faithfully waiting for a soldier boy to come home from Korea, apparently. And is madly in love with him. So it's kind of like the fear versus the hope of Jimmy Stewart's character.
There's just so many scenes like that.
And we talked about you're talking one of the great all-time cinematic intros of all is Grace Kelly's entrance in this movie. It's almost shot like a literal dream. Like Jimmy's falling asleep, and then he wakes up, and this like angel is standing over him with this, and she's looking right into our souls. It's like the one other time that happens is when Raymond Burr locks eyes with us, and it's an entirely different experience.
Oh yes, it is.
And there's a whole lot of there's a whole other like there's so many essays been written about how this also was like a lot of this film was statements about the patriarchy and the male gaze, because like I just realized as I was saying that it's like I guess if you're a woman watching this film, watching Grace Kelly's entrance is a completely different experience too, because it's not more of like, oh, yowzers, God, can you imagine this beautiful woman looking at you? It's more of like you probably, I wish I was her, or look how glamorous she is. But there's a whole bunch of that stuff that I think this movie has been endlessly analyzed and theorized about, and you can fit about any theory you want to on it. But man, what a fucking entrance though.
Yeah. All right, hit me with some random observations.
So I talk a lot of shit about police officers from time to time, because a lot of times police officers in fiction are not portrayed well. What a paragon of virtue and constitutionality this police officer is.
This guy won't won't violate the Constitution just to get in and see what's. Come on. What kind of police officer are you?
I mean, it is like, I wish we had more of this kind of positive portrayal, honestly, of people who respect respect people's rights. And I think that it seems like this was kind of predominant view of how the police were portrayed until like the 70s and 80s, when we got tough on crime and we wanted our police officers to brutalize criminals, and we haven't ever gotten it fucking back. Yeah. Now behind the scenes, they were literally throwing the book at people, which was like a book that they'd beat you in the face with. So like it's not like they were super, but like there is something to this whole fig leaf of like, well, this is how we are portraying, this is how we're supposed to be, right? Yeah. When you throw the fig leaf away, I think we've all seen in the last few years what society starts looking like then. But I liked it. I liked it. This guy's like, law and order in the best kind of way. Why does it not occur to Jeff to take pictures with this fucking camera? He's like,
that's a damn fine question.
It's almost like watching a movie nowadays where they pretend like they don't have cell phones. This man's got a camera in his hands 50% of the time. He's sweating bullets about, oh, this guy's going to get out of here, and then he's going to miss his chest. It's all tied up weird, and he could just be snapping photos and be like, look at these. Yeah. Well, look at his bloody knife. Where'd it go? I needed a film like I had some film, but it all melted in my apartment, and the drugstore's out, like something. Like, why is this award-winning photographer not taking pictures?
That's probably the best question you could ask during this film, because it makes no sense.
I think the answer is it would ruin the film, because there would actually be evidence that this guy could ask about, or there maybe not, because again, I feel like the cop took Jimmy at his word. So but it's like, man, why don't they just take pictures? The other is when things got contentious between Grace Kelly and Jim Stewart and the detective, and they're all got brandy snifters. This is the most aggressive brandy swilling I've ever seen on film. All three of them palming these snifters, spinning this brandy for all they're worth. Did you not see that?
No, I didn't notice it.
Like, they're just angrily swilling, all three of them in all in the same POV, just swilling this fucking brandy. It's like it's a paint that they're trying to mix.
You do, man. You got brandy. You gotta swill it.
Don't ever let that brandy stop in motion, apparently.
No, it goes bad if you do.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought that's like an impressive amount of brandy swilling. Did you have any rando observations?
I got a ton of them. Like the piano man has the worst underwear in the history of underwear.
Shit.
It's like they took leftover scraps of making Andre the Giant's thongs and just said, here you go.
All right, well, I want to make a note for my second rewatch of this. Yeah, okay. Sure. Good one.
Did they really put Jimmy Stewart in a cast for this? Because it seems like they might have.
I think they did. I think
Yeah.
they did. Maybe it's articulated, like it was cut at the thigh, because it seemed like when he was fighting Raymond Burr, there's a lot more mobility in that than I would have suspected from him. But yeah, why not?
It always looked like it
The
sucked. I had a couple
the
cousins
authentic
who ended
itching.
up in those. Yeah,
I've never
yeah.
had a cast like that, but like the constant torment of the itching and his like scratching, I thought was a nice little characterization too, and added to the. Oh God, how sweaty and itchy that thing must have been in a 90-degree apartment with no breeze. Holy hell.
Yeah, terrible. I couldn't get over this costume jewelry thing. When they first showed him stuffing, cleaning out his case and then repacking it, I was like, what the fuck does this guy sell? Costume jewelry? And then it came out, yeah, that's in fact exactly what he sells. And the Technicolor aspect of it made it look like just this gaudy birthday party ribbon or something that he was selling. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. And why because I asked Cecily, it's like, do women or did women ever carry this much jewelry in their fucking purses? Like, it's weird that he's emptying it and cataloging and all that kind of stuff. But like, when like, I'm like, I don't know, maybe in the 50s you had like, oh, well, this was my going to the grocery store bracelet, and now I've got caught out in the rain and I'm in a taxi cab. I should have my travel bracelet on, and like there was all this stuff that women were supposed to know, and because like this is the time where people showed up to like dinner parties and tuxedos and shit. So like that seemed crazy to me. Well, I don't. And Cecily's like, I fucking don't know. I've never carried that much jewelry, but no. Then we got a satisfying answer to it. It's hilarious that she said, "What does this guy do? Sell costume jewelry?"
Yeah,
then the cop comes in. Guess what, Jimmy? He's selling costume jewelry.
My mind was blown. And the first question I had is his wife's ring costume jewelry, her wedding ring.
Oh, I would strongly suspect.
If I were her, I'd be suspicious. I'd be like, I'd take that down. And he gives me a ring, and I know he's a costume jewelry salesman. I'm taking that to the jeweler to get it inspected.
I did wonder about their relationship because he seemed like he was trying to be sweet to her. Like he was making her breakfast in bed, and he cut these fresh cut flowers, and then she like throws the flower down and then takes one bite of the breakfast and then comes out to berate him. And I'm not saying she should be killed and split up into 6 pieces and buried in a flower bed, but that's just a bad relationship. Maybe no fault divorces are a good idea.
Yeah.
maybe it's better to do that than like, shit, I guess I gotta kill somebody. What else you got for me?
I'm pretty sure now after seeing this movie that Jimmy Stewart must have a WikiFeed entry, because there was some disturbing toes on display in this episode.
There was some weird, like out of focus, frightened, gnarled looking toes. Yeah.
Not a fan.
We've really steadily increased the ideas we have for people's beauty. They gotta have good looking feet now. Well, if you want to be on WikiFeed anyway.
Yeah, we didn't get to see Grace Kelly's feet. Not in totality anyway.
Well, she's got those elegant silk slippers. She wasn't a fucking whore, Jim. Come on, Princess of Monaco. Hold your tongue. She's gonna be a
apologize for calling her that.
She's not gonna be a WikiFeet girl.
Didn't think I did, but okay.
Well, I guess on that note, we're gonna beat our WikiFeet out of here. And thank you for listening to our review of The Rear Window. We'll be back next week on the Bald Move Prestige for The Wolf of Wall Street. Do you know that movie's getting on 10 years old now, Jim?
Yeah.
I feel very old realizing that. And this was right before the era of Bald Move. I thought sure we'd covered it in some capacity. I've only seen this movie I think twice, and I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to revisiting it. But yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, Margot Robbie.
Jonah
Who
Hill.
else is in this? Jonah Hill, John Bernthal,
right?
And his Lobes of Fury, all in The Wolf of Wall Street. We'll be back next week for another Prestige. Hope you enjoyed Rear Window. Check out some Hitchcock films. I know I'm going to be. And until next time, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
I'll see you later.